Hello, beautiful co-creators of the new paradigm. I'm Wieteke Koolhof from Design for Awareness, and I'm here with Reuben Langdon.
Hi.
Reuben, thank you for being here. We met each other in Sedona, Arizona last year, and we worked together on one of your documentaries that you make for your own YouTube channel, interviews with Ed or Extra Dimensionals.
Correct.
I really love your work, and I will put a link below for everybody who's curious. Reuben does not just documentaries; he's a documentary artist, in my opinion, and he really focuses on channelers and channeled work. So, Reuben, would you like to share a little bit with us how you got into this, how your journey got started on, interviewing all these channelers?
Oh, wow. Wow,
If you want.
I wasn't expecting to go into this right now, but no, this is great. So I've been sort of seeking, I had a UFO experience back in 2007, and from that experience, it's sort of, I got the curiosity bug, right? To try to figure out what did I see? What happened? This experience. So it wasn't anything dramatic. It was just very basic viewing of some lights in the sky during the middle of the day. So I kept pursuing. I viewed on the internet, and through different searches and research, and then I came across Stephen Greer's work, and then I went to one of his conferences and did one of the CE5 events. Where you sort of summon the UFOs. I don't know if you're familiar with that work, but then that sort of like was the proof in the pudding for me, because I had more experiences.
Great.
That there was this phenomenon was real, right? The UFO phenomenon is real. There's the non-local intelligence, or spooky action at a distance, as Einstein would call it. This sort of consciousness connection became more real for me. And then, but at the same time I'm exploring consciousness, then I was also doing more research in more grounded ways, talking to researchers who have been studying the phenomenon for several years, experiencers, contactees, abductees, and I just kept researching. And through all of the grounded researchers, the people who sort of looked at the hard data, I only went so far. Like, I even produced the citizen hearing on disclosure, and I got to talk to many different military witnesses and government people who had experiences on the government level, pilots and SAC nuke base heads and captains who had, in a government sense, interactions with extraterrestrials, or some higher intelligence. So
was this posted on YouTube just in between?
The citizen hearing, if you go to citizenhearing.org, that has full 30 plus hours of testimony from the
thank you for
the
adding
hearings.
that, so people can look it up.
Absolutely, please
great.
check that out. So I call it, that's the nuts and bolts of ufology. Like, if anybody is doubting the subject matter, and people who are probably watching this and are probably well beyond that stage, and have had their own experiences or contacts, but for the people who are still questioning and really want to know if the phenomenon is real or not, I always guide them to that, because that will turn, it's sort of the layman's, the ABCs of ufology, I call it. Once you sit through the 30 plus hours of the evidence, then it's undeniable. You really can't argue it. So I was in that phase, and I was sort of doing that, simultaneously exploring the consciousness connection, trying to figure out why some people had good experiences and why some people had bad experiences. And I used to run we call it the UFO meetup group at my old office in LA, and we had several different industry people come to my office once a month on the first Tuesday of the month, and at that time the channeler, actually we had Daryl Anka, Wendy Kennedy, and Nora Harold, all exceptional channelers who at the time I didn't even know what channeling was, right? I mean, I knew what it was, but I didn't know they were channelers per se. And they would show up and they would come to this event, this meetings every Tuesday. And I remember having a conversation with Wendy, and she mentioned to me about the abduction phenomenon, or the temporary detainment phenomenon, being a soul contract.
Right.
And that clicked in my mind. Something clicked there where I was like, I need to know more. And then it was right around that time I started checking out Daryl's stuff with Bashar.
Yeah.
Knowing what I know now about these cats, these people, like I would be interrogating them every time, but they would just show up and we would like we'd have different guests, usually guests like Richard Dolan or Barbara Lamb, or researchers and people in the more of the evidence-based field. Mm-hmm. So channeling was something a little foreign to me, but I just wasn't getting the answers that I wanted through just the studying the evidence. Like I knew there was more. Mm-hmm. And then through the studies of my own meditation, doing meditations, and also sort of consciousness studies, then the connection to the channeling work became more apparent.
Yeah.
And that's when I was like, okay, I need to tell this story, and I need to tell a story of a benevolent sense of, because there was a lot of fear in the sort of the evidence-based world. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of fear-based, especially when it came to the abductees, and it came to, is it David Jacobs, his work with regressing people, and so there's sort of a couple different camps in the ufology world of yes. So before we got cut off there, I sort of was following the mainstream UFO hardcore evidence, real world evidence of the ufology, higher dimensional, extra dimensional experience. And I was meeting a lot of people who were taking a negative perspective on the concept, on the idea, but logically that didn't make sense to me, because we have the evidence. We have the evidence that they've been here. We've had the evidence that they've come and gone. They've tampered with nukes, and the overall collective evidence of, even if some people were saying they had a negative experience, there were still several, twice as many people saying they had positive experiences. And then even those who had the negative experiences still were put back into their original, homes and beds, and, they had maybe sort of a nightmarish type experience, but there was no scars. There were no, scars in the sense of, there was no blood, there was no real physical damage. If anything, most of the experiencers had various ailments healed. Like I talked to one gentleman who had terrifying experience, but his Crohn's disease was healed. One day he had severe Crohn's disease, the next day it's gone. Right. And yet he still thought this was a negative experience. Okay. So I'm like, tell me, how does that work? Logically, that doesn't make any sense. So then when Wendy mentioned the soul contract concept, that made a lot more sense to me, based on the physical evidence, based on the collective testimony of the abductees, and sort of cross-referencing both of those things. it made more sense that people who were being abducted simply were not having the full picture. They simply were only getting one side, their personal experiences, no doubt terrifying, not to discredit their experiences at all. But they were only seeing it from that lens. When you look at the collective body of evidence, to me, it just, there was overwhelming evidence that this was a positive thing happening to humanity, happening to the individuals, even if their perspective of it was negative. So that was the story I wanted to tell, because in the mass media sense of things, there's been mostly a negative swing on the contact topic, right? You have X-Files, you have all these movies that sort of sway it in this direction. And even documentary films, some of the more well-made ones, tend to sort of sway it in a, we don't know. And I think a lot of them, even if they did know the truth, that this is, look at the evidence, it's very positive, they still wanted to relate to the people having these negative experiences. Or I think as a collective consciousness up until now, we've been very fear-based, right? We thrive on fear. It makes sales, right? It's going to people are going to buy more. So unconsciously, I don't think it was a conscious choice on these on most of these documentary filmmakers, but they sort of swayed it that direction, to relate, to try to relate to people. And I was like, no, we've got enough of those. So I wanted I wanted to start it to put out a different story. And following the channeling work by individuals like yourself and many others, having direct contact with extraterrestrials or extra-dimensionals, and having that conversation sort of took the fear out of it. For myself, and I was hoping to sort of convey that in my series to allow others to connect in this way, in this non-fear-based information and sort of consciousness expanding idea. So sorry for that long explanation on why I got on this journey, but that's sort of where I am now with it, and that's the story I continue to want to tell. It's been my personal journey, and again, not to discredit anybody who's had negative experiences with this phenomenon, but personally, I think there's a lot more positive. If you explore the positive, there's a lot more positive to be explored than negative.
Yes. Well, you can go as far as you want in any direction, I guess.
Sure.
But
yeah.
It just depends on what you want to focus on. But I'm so grateful for people like you who decide to show the other end of the coin, in a sense. I fully agree. There's so much out there on the internet that is fear-based already. And because people don't understand exactly, because we don't have the full picture yet. We're still putting the puzzle pieces together. We all together are. I think even with channeled information, you have to take all the puzzle pieces, put them together, and make your own version out of it, for now at least. And even then, it's going to always be your version, because you have your individual perspective. We're still figuring these things out, but I love that. As far as I see things changing right now, there's so much more love-based and self-empowering information out there, and you're really adding to that with your beautiful work. So
I'm just pointing the camera. You guys are doing all the work. I'm just pointing the camera. And choosing what I focus on, right? With the camera, you just put your focus there, and then that's what you're going to put out. So. Well,
I wouldn't make it smaller than it is, because it's really you're creating a platform, and I think there's a lot of channelers that are so intuitive. That the whole PR thing is kind of how does that work?
Right. Yeah.
And so we need each other. We all need each other. So it's great that there's people who are a little bit more grounded and who love doing that. And I think the whole movement in itself is being driven by passion.
Absolutely.
And all these people on the same frequency with the same curiosity, they find each other automatically. That's at least how I met you and so many other people on this road, and I love it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Thanks
So
again.
we had an amazing interview, and that will be released soon. So I'm sure this will probably get released before that, probably, but very close.
We will see.
I'm almost done. We're getting there. And I guess, well, I don't want to steal the interview. So there's more of a conversation than an interview, right? We're just kind of talking with each other here.
We're just talking and just sharing because we both have the same interests, and there's so much to talk about. And just you sharing right now on why you do this work and how you observe there's kind of like two camps of fear-based and love-based information. And I love that you brought that up as well from my own experience. I am an experiencer, and I came from that part of really being afraid also as a child, but later on starting to grasp it better and see that this can really happen, like you just said with the man who had healing happening for his Crohn's disease. You can get a beautiful message out of a contact experience and be terrified at the same time. So this is very, very confusing for your rational mind. So you have to get to a point where you can do something with that. So I think the first time I Googled, do extraterrestrials exist? I think I was probably 23. It was probably after I saw a UFO. And they were suddenly en masse in my dreams. And there was so much fear-based stuff out there and almost nothing love-based. So I just quit that experiment after 1 or 2 attempts of Googling and getting a little bit wiser out of that, because it really didn't resonate with me. The only thing I was left with was this huge desire to do meditation and get myself sorted out. So, and that's exactly what eventually brought me to the whole channeling experience. So the answers are inside. They're not. You can only get them through experience and your own trust. And like you said, the CE5, and maybe you can explain to people who don't know what that is, a little bit more what that is, how that tipped the scales for you.
I mean, I've been a martial artist most of my life, and and there's a meditation, looking inward aspect to the martial arts, which is quite big. In my younger years, you just want to look cool and do all the fancy moves and kick ass, right? So I always was like, well, I'll do that when I get older. And then I guess I'm getting older now, so I'm like, I think it's time to start to meditate and look inside. And but it was really so I had that tool in my back pocket for a long time. I just never really accessed it. And when I had that experience, that 2007 sighting, and then I started looking into the work of Greer and then he started talking about the consciousness aspect of contact. And because I had the martial arts background, I could relate. And basically, through intention and through what's also known as remote viewing, you can sort of make a connection to these other civilizations, these other beings, other consciousnesses, and then sort of vector them in, sort of pull them into our reality, where they also, because they're sort of on a higher frequency than we are, they, when we're putting out the intention, it's sort of like on a radar for them. If they have like intention radar, and it shows up, and they can quite easily phase in and out of dimensional realities, some using craft, some using just their own bodies and their own technology, their biological technology, and make these orbs and these lights in the sky and vehicles and different things, as long as we sort of give them the coordinates, via our intention, then these higher intelligences can manifest into our reality.
Yes.
And that's essentially what C5 is. It's Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. It's a term that Greer coined, basically where humans initiate contact, right? Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Carl Sagan, I believe, came up with that. Did he come up with that? Or did maybe it was the other UFO researcher? He may have came up with that, the Project Blue Book guy. But anyways, that's Close Encounters of the Third Kind is, ETs, physical ETs, sort of the abduction scenario, which was popularized by the Steven Spielberg film. Yeah. So the Fifth Kind is us initiating contact. Right. And it's, it works. I've done it in Greer's groups, and I've also done it individually. I go out and, on a clear night and sit under the stars and sort of, do the remote viewing techniques, do the meditations, and, strange lights start to show up in the sky.
Yeah, yeah.
Unfortunately, that's as far as I've gone with it. I haven't had full on, taken aboard ships memories yet. We're working on that.
Yeah.
So I'm sure it happens every night.
Yeah, I was going to say, maybe you just didn't remember it yet, because I don't know. But if you're inviting them for contact so strongly. Yeah. If you make so many invitations to them and they have this intention radar, like you said, and that's what I believe too, it's hardly impossible for nothing to have happened. I think maybe you just haven't been ready yet to recall the memories.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. I think, my dreams have been more intense. I have had only one conscious contact from a mantis being. Wow. That I remember, telepathic communication in my waking state, semi-waking state. It was in sort of a meditative context. But other than that experience, I don't have memories on board a ship. I don't have these sort of, it's usually when I'm working with someone else, like yourself. We did some work with hybrid children. Yeah. And I have had contact in that sense, telepathic contact. Yeah. In my waking state. Yes. With the children, and the work that you were doing was helping to bring that back a little bit. Cool. So, but I don't have memories on being aboard ships at night. It's, I don't have these. I know it happens. But I just haven't, I don't know. I think they know that my mind would be so blown and I'd be so on cloud nine, just like, oh my God, it happened. And I'd probably be, telling the world, and I wouldn't be able to get any work done probably. That's probably why they're like, you have work to do. You got to sit and edit. We do not want to distract you anymore from doing that. So we're going to hold off from giving you those memories.
Wow, it's so funny.
Or maybe that's myself thinking that, going that
I was
path.
just gonna throw a reflection at you about this.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Please.
Because I was thinking, if that is really what you believe, don't you think you might be keeping these memories from yourself?
Well, I don't believe that. I mean, but maybe subconsciously I believe that. I'm trying to justify. I'm trying to make an excuse. I'm trying to figure out, well, why don't I have these memories? So that was like one of the justifications that I came up with. So it's like, oh, well, maybe I'm supposed to be, doing work. I mean, the mantis thing was cool. I didn't freak out. It was energetically, it was a lot of energy. Like my body was vibrating and these kinds of things. So I guess from someone on the outside looking in, they'd probably think I'm freaking out. What the hell is going on with that guy? But I was just, because I was like, whoa,
Wow.
But it was so intense, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, I was okay after a couple hours. I was like, okay, that's good. I had that experience and I can talk about it. But I wasn't like, you know, in a way that I guess obsessive. Well,
Right.
maybe some people might think it's a little obsessive.
I love how everything keeps changing
Yeah, yeah.
as you're sharing.
Like,
It's so
well,
funny.
I'm trying to think of other people's perspectives. From my perspective, I wasn't obsessive at all, but from other people, I might have been a little obsessive.
Oh,
Um,
what's obsessive anyway? You're just, the same for me. I'm completely head over heels with this stuff, but
right.
I call that enthusiasm,
Yes. And
and
yeah,
maybe
that's the way I see it.
yes, or positive obsession maybe.
Let's just stick with the enthusiasm, right?
Okay,
You're
yes,
following our paths, right? So,
yeah, yeah,
um, but yeah, so and I think anyways, yeah, it's more presence to open, right, for me
yeah,
later in life as I'm going down this path,
yeah.
to recall the memories, to have these experiences, and you know, it is what it is.
I think that's the strongest way to look at it for yourself. More presence to open for you later down the road. For
Yeah.
me as well, I mean, most of my life I didn't get what was going on. So I became this expert at trusting that whatever is happening must be there for some good reason. And
Hmm.
one day it will explain itself. So
Yeah.
you can go from that, you can come from that road, or you
Right.
can come from the road where you really want these experiences, but maybe you're just gonna
Right.
get it when it all makes sense right away. I don't know. I mean, all
Well,
all
it,
possible colors on the in this painting exist.
in the, right in the spectrum,
Yeah,
that's a good point because you're coming at it from a person who had these experiences and then there's questioning, and I'm the person who hasn't had
yeah,
experiences, but am questioning. But at the same time, we're still reaching the same conclusion of
yeah,
just trust how it's going to unfold.
yes,
Don't get too anxious. Don't have any uh, um, uh, predispositions. What am I trying to
right,
say? Any kind of um, uh, expectations of the outcome, right? So
yes,
the more I release my expectations,
yeah,
then the more the more is unfolding in sort
yeah,
of in a very exciting way. It's not overwhelming,
yeah,
where I'm having all these memories of, but I get to meet you, and then we get to have a session, and then I get to connect with my hybrid kids.
yeah,
That's something that I didn't have expectations for, and I was like, oh, that was fun. I was like, cool, okay. So, that
yeah,
these sort of experiences,
yeah.
and you're coming at it from the other angle of having these connections, and again, not having expectations and trusting. That's perfect.
Yeah, that's where it brought me eventually to the conclusion that there's really no better place to be than to just drop all expectation and just go with the flow. Because
Yep.
otherwise, you're just going to continue to freak yourself out or
Right.
insist on a certain outcome, and that's just not working in this journey. If you want to
Right.
take it from within, if you want to take it from the
Exactly.
mind, you can do that. But that wasn't and still isn't my preferred path in that sense.
Yeah. I mean, well, again, you're limiting yourself.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah. The
or
rational
you
minds can't grasp it.
right.
Not
And that's
alone.
again no judgment on the limitations, because that's
No.
one path of
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
of evolution. That's one path of experience. But after these interviews and these studies and these experiences, we have these other tools. We have
Yeah.
the emotional body that we can tap into, and when you have a mind, body, spirit uh, uh, tool complex, right?
Right?
And they're all sort of integrated, and they can be used more in one way and more in the other. Are we breaking up here?
Yep.
There we go.
Okay,
Buffering. Okay.
just go
Uh,
ahead. Yeah.
I'll just reset a little bit. So when we have this mind, body, uh, soul sort of tool complex, and if we
Yeah.
can access it all, right? We have all these tools available to us. Why not go into all of it, as opposed to
Right.
just focusing just on the mental body itself?
Yes.
And which I'm learning to get away from the mental body, because I've been so tied up in the technology and the evidence based, this grounded, which is more, I think, of more of a mental concept of explaining the phenomenon, which is fun. I do that, but tapping into the emotional body more, I've been able to have more experiences per se.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. And I love it all. And even what you just said about limitation, that's also, it's essential to have this journey, to have the limitation. And then you can take it wherever you like, in whatever way you like to take it there. But the limitation is what gives both you and me and everybody else their own individual journey.
Right.
And I just love that people are finding each other and sharing now more openly on this topic that has been labeled as a fairy tale for way too long.
Right.
Although there is no such thing as too long, there's only defined timing. But I really love how everything is coming to the surface right now, and how you're a big part of sharing all that. So
it's exciting stuff, man.
Really?
Both in our technology, in our way of looking at things, in our science, it's all interconnected. You know, and that's a huge part, because I am sort of the mental nerd that likes the groundbreaking discoveries in science. To see the interconnection between where we're going with science and in the interaction to these other dimensional realities. That's essentially that's where we're headed. We're headed to the acknowledgement of that, and then more of our future technologies are going to come from these realms. They already have been coming from these realms. We just haven't acknowledged it.
Yeah.
And now we get to see that in action. Things like quantum computing and sort of newer energies, 0-point energy type concepts and ideas that are now making their way through, and we're sort of seeing that. So very exciting times.
Yes, very much. I really love it. So we were actually gonna talk about, at least that was the vague plan, to talk about hybrid children a lot more. But maybe we should just make that a part 2, a new video, and just round this one off and keep it like a 20-minute. I don't know exactly how long altogether this has been.
An introduction. Yeah, that sounds good.
So then I would like to thank you, Reuben, for your time and sharing on the topic in general. And let's dive into the hybrid children stuff in the next one.
Sounds good.
Okay, see you later.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.